Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, the US President Donald Trump is predictable for his unpredictable and unimaginable decisions. Out of many, one such decision which was really critical and disastrous, particularly for Global South and pinpointedly for the vulnerable communities across the globe, including Pakistan. And that is the closure of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Today, in this program, we will try to explore the ultimate ripple effects and even the disastrous effects of shutting down USAID, particularly when it comes to the 80% of its programs are going to be suspended. And then $845 million of aid is halted when it comes to Pakistan. It's approximately more than 39 critical projects which are going to be closed down. And these projects actually spanning from energy, economy, agriculture, education, healthcare, including democracy, human rights, humanitarian assistance, and lots of other areas. We will try to explore the fallout of USAID closure, especially when it comes to the employment, when it comes to the poverty reduction, when it comes to the healthcare, especially in healthcare, the HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis programs, then the women reproductive health, child stunting and malnutrition, water and sanitation, and obviously the higher education and in agriculture particularly, the crop patterns and seed engineering and seed generation and all that. These are all the areas which are already grappled because of the fragile economy in Pakistan and because of the debt and all other aspects. We have very limited resources for the social development and all that. So when most of the projects under USAID are going to be suspended or closed, it means that we have to sustain it with our own resources, and that must have to be done. But to talk on this important aspect, we have in our studios Dr. Usman Chohan. He is the advisor on economic affairs to the president of Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, CASS. Most welcome to you, Dr. Thank you very much for your presence here. And with him, Ms. Eshal Arooj. She is an economic analyst. Thank you very much, Eshal, for your presence here. And online joining us, Dr. Hasan Zafar, all the way from Lahore. He is a political economy analyst. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasan, for your presence online. My first question is to you, Dr. Usman, that as we all know that the Trump administration's decision to cancel more than 80% of the programs under the US Agency for International Development, USAID, how it is going to impact Pakistan. It has suspended at least $845 million, more than 39 important projects. You have all the details in energy, economy, education, healthcare and all that. So it's all happening when Pakistan's economy is really fragile and we have very squeezed budget when it comes to the social sector development. So how do you see what sort of impacts we are facing now under this decision particularly?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure to be with you. The decision to cut USAID is very significant for developing countries because the sorts of things, broadly speaking, I know that there are some criticisms of some programs, but broadly speaking, many of these things were of a critical or life-saving nature in the developing world. Life-saving medicines in sub-Saharan Africa, water purification in the desert regions of South Asia or the Middle East. Many things of this sort have an enormous impact relative to their cost. And so you can look at the converse.
By the way, those life-saving medicines were also included in the, when we are talking about tuberculosis and some sort of...
Absolutely.
So that is also included there.
Absolutely. So you can look at the converse of this and see that if you remove these things, you are leading to the deaths of people. It's very simple. And I don't lay the blame in any way on Donald Trump for this because these decisions are being made by the Department of Government Efficiency. And their attitude towards the destruction of lives is not just third world lives. They're destroying American lives now with decisions such as trying to undermine Social Security, which is a legitimate right for anybody paying into the system. They are putting American lives in jeopardy as well. And whatever efficiencies they think they can gain from this, the public value destruction that is caused in their country and in the rest of the world is staggering in its amount. So for a low investment, they got huge returns. Now they're going to actually lead to the destruction of lives.
Your point well taken. Eshal, Pakistan received approximately $2.5 billion in USAID funding between 2010 and 2020, with hundreds of millions of dollars actually allocated annually for critical initiatives and development projects, which were already on decline in recent years. We have noticed that in 2024 particularly, USAID budget for Pakistan was just $116.5 million. That included $21.53 million for basic health, $14 million for disaster prevention and preparedness. It's $12 million for energy, $6 million for NGOs, and $4.8 million for agriculture. But now it's going to impact these sectors as well. What do you think about that?
So I'll break down the question to two categories, short term and long term. So when I talk about short term, since Pakistan recently averted an economic crisis, and right after this we are up for this one. So USAID covers a huge ambit of things like you mentioned. And it is going to affect each and every development area that USAID was actually giving funds to. So let's talk about the health sector. Pakistan in South Asia is ranked as having highest infant and maternal mortality rate. And USAID was actually giving funds in, to provide better medical facilities for this area. And that is going to be affected. People are going to lose their lives. Next, if we talk about the disaster prevention, so we know about the floods of 2020. We had a huge chunk of our fiscal dynamics of the country wasted or used or utilized in that particular scenario.
The most disaster-prone country.
Yeah. So USAID was actually funding NDMA, which is the National Disaster Management Agency of Pakistan, to come up with preventive measures in order to, if a certain national calamity hits in the future, in order to minimize the effect of that. And according to my own research on social vulnerability, almost 75% of the people in Pakistan are socially vulnerable to climate disasters. So seeing the way climate change is going, the situation seems very bleak in the short run. Then we talk about energy. Again, we are spending a huge budget of our country on energy production. USAID was helping us to change our energy production to renewable resources, which is again going to be hindered now. And NGOs, in NGOs, I believe that they were funding, but the people and the expertise were ours. So maybe 50% of the thing is going away, but the better 50% is staying with us. So using this expertise, we can sustain our NGOs network. And then at the end, agriculture, climate change is affecting agriculture. There's water shortage, which is yielding lower crops for Pakistan. So in the short run, and I see that the situation is very bleak. The effect of it is going to be devastating for people. But in the long run, because we have the resources, the only thing we need is funding. And with the current things that are going on in Pakistan, like the increase in the tax base, so that is going to help us build our own revenue resources that would eventually help us overcome
Definitely,
this.
you are absolutely right, because ultimately we have to do something for ourselves, really.
Yes.
Dr. Hasan, it's obvious that the foreign aid is not just a charitable endeavor. It is an investment in stability, security, and economic growth for both the recipient and donor as well. Do you not think that the US decision to freeze and scrap core aid agency jolted the emerging economies like Pakistan and make it harder to attract the private donors, multilateral institutions, the regional allies, and their investments particularly? While recent freeze also halted the Pakistan's private investment initiative program worth $43.5 million, focused on generating employments and different sort of job opportunities across the country. So how do you rate this decision by Washington?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Faisal Saab, for the question. And your panelists have rightly elaborated on the various the impact of stopping this aid on various departments and development programs in Pakistan. It will definitely affect Pakistan uh, in attracting investment because any foreign funding coming in gives a sense of confidence to the foreign investors that Pakistan uh, is an important country. And because in a unilateral world, US aid coming to Pakistan meant that Pakistan mattered. It was important for the United States. But let's look at the context in which all this was happening. This aid was initiated by President Kennedy in 1961. That was the peak of Cold War. Major criticism that came on the US aid from within the United States, Doge, I'm referring to, by Elon Musk, the advisor to the President Donald Trump, that there was massive corruption in this program that employed over 10,000 personnel across the globe, and many people are losing jobs. So, well, that's a different kind of history. But what I am trying to highlight here is that this program was part of the Cold War project, and the Cold War ended in 1990-91, and after that it lingered on. It lingered on because of its importance in the US foreign policy. And as we know, this program was run by the State Department that is responsible for the US foreign policy. That also needs to be seen, that why US foreign policy was running this program. Now, when it has ended, that means that the project that was started about 60 years ago, it has now come to an end. The United States is not interested in peddling its agenda in that direction by appeasing its friends and allies across the globe. And we have seen it's not just Pakistan. What has happened in Europe, what has happened in other parts of the world. So for us, what we need to understand, what is in our interest, that we must recognize that it is a different world after after Donald Trump's second administration, and we got quite accustomed to that kind of help from the United States that is not going to be there anymore. So what we need to do, there are very important programs. This aid was used for Mangla Dam rehabilitation project, environmental issues, NGOs.
Definitely, Dr. Hasan, there were lots of projects, and we are one by one talking on that. But how will the termination of USAID's economic growth initiative influence Pakistan's efforts to reduce poverty and unemployment, as swear jolts are going to be predicted, as lots of reports tell us that actually US administration intends to keep, as you have rightly pointed out, only 300 to 600 staff members at the USAID out of worldwide strength, rightly pointed out, 10,000. It means that if an NGO depends 60% on USAID, it will have to lay off at least 60% of its employees now. That spells actually the unemployment in the countries with fragile economies like Pakistan, where unemployment rate is already estimated 6.36%, and projected rate is approximately 7.5%, while the poverty is actually hampering us and the growth as well. That rate is estimated by the World Bank, and that was in 2024. We don't have the figures right now, but that is 25.3%. That is on decline a bit, but that was 25.3% the poverty rate in 2024 till December. So how do you see that, how this is going to impact basically?
It is going to impact very, very hard because this aid was giving a sense of confidence to the foreign donors. So when the money stops coming in, when we are unable to attract foreign investment, it is certainly going to give rise to the unemployment. It is going to make situation look even worse. And as you have given us the data, the estimated projected rate of unemployment is 7.5%. So we don't know it's going to go up to 9% or somewhere in the days to come. But what I was saying that we are not in a very good position to measure the real impact of the program at the moment. But we know the NGOs, despite all the criticism on them, despite all the allegations leveled against them, they were doing some contribution towards poverty alleviation, especially in the areas where women and children's health was concerned. So health issues, environmental issues, these programs have suddenly stopped. So we need to understand that how, if we need to, to continue these programs, we need to find other ways of supporting these NGOs and government programs, because all the aid was not going to the government. It was also distributed to the private organizations, non-government organizations. So that is the kind of thing. Major projects included Mangla Dam, as I mentioned before, and the environmental issues. But now we know the United States has withdrawn from its commitment in the Paris Agreement, the environmental agencies, and WHO as well. So the United States is not gradually, but rather drastically withdrawing from these programs all over the world. And it is going to affect very badly countries like Pakistan, which got, in a way, accustomed to this aid in continuing these programs. It was kind of a comfort zone for the government that, okay, these areas of health and education.
Dr. Hasan, your point well taken. Dr. Usman, how will the closure of over 60 health facilities previously funded by USAID affect the 1.7 million people in Pakistan, including 1.2 million of the Afghan refugees as well, who relied on these services? And those healthcare workers are actually separate to be impacted, while $52 million of the global health supply chain program, which was designed to ensure the availability of essential and critical medical supplies, would also has lots of impacts on Pakistan. What impact would be on the women empowerment, the gender equality initiative, the polio eradication, the water and sanitation, because water and sanitation is also linked with polio eradication? And then if you don't have the critical medicines and all others, so that is the area going to impact further. So how do you see overall scenario?
Well, yes, as Isha had mentioned, the short-term consequences are dire. In the long term, there might be some adjustment, which is good, but you will certainly see, and this is tragic to say, sickness and death spread throughout the third world. And this will create acute distress. The mortality rates will see a tick up, and it will be very difficult for the people who are already at the very margins of the societies they live in to survive. But the truth is, again, that DOGE has this mindset not just of doing this to the third world by cutting some minor amount for the US budget, it's a tiny amount, but it made such a huge difference. It's also doing this in the United States. And so you're seeing things like a measles outbreak in Texas. Measles was not something you would expect in the US. So it seems like the plan for DOGE is not just to ignore the third world, world, but also to turn the US into a third world country. And I think that that is not a good response to even the failures of foreign assistance. Foreign aid has its own problems. We've seen in the 20th century. We know that there's limitations with that. But the ambition of that was to bring everybody else to the first world. The counter proposal that Doge gives you is, why don't we make everybody third world? And then we'll be all right. So I disagree with this mindset of Elon Musk very
So
severely.
right now, Doge is actually dodging United States as well. So
that's right.
when we are talking about Eshal, what are the potential consequences for the women reproductive health services and their critical needs in Pakistan's, as we are following lots of suspensions of the UNFPA administered health facilities as well due to the aid cuts, as according to the different estimates tell us that approximately $308 million to sustain even basic services under UNFPA programs was needed in the global south, including Pakistan. So how do you see that, the potential impact on women, particularly on their women reproductive health when you're talking about?
So when we talk about UNFPA, there are three major things that they were funding for. The first one was the women of rural and marginalized communities and their high mortality rate. The second one was contraceptives and birth controls, and the third one was gender-based violence. So talking about them one by one, the first one, which is high mortality rate and the impact on rural and marginalized women. So Pakistan has a very high maternal mortality rate, which is 186 deaths out of 100,000 live births, which is extremely high. And through this initiative, they were actually funding mobile medical facilities for women and for their pre and postnatal care. They were giving skilled doulas, which are birth assistants. So this was helping this mortality rate go down. But since now it is coming to an halt, we see that this mortality rate might go up. And would eventually go up if we don't do anything.
So taking this, these words forward, what Eshal said, Dr. Usman, how will the suspension of the USAID's $86 million integrated health system strengthening and service delivery program impact Pakistan's healthcare overall? The infrastructure that was relied upon that. So what challenges might arise in managing future health crisis without such a critical support, especially when we are talking about in the short term?
Yes, in the short run, again, the point is that these healthcare systems have been made vulnerable. But the truth is that it might be a wake-up call for developing countries that have good endowments. Pakistan, alhamdulillah, is a country that is blessed with enormous endowments.
Yes.
What Ms. Eshal has pointed out about the funding being the issue is true, but that is something we can fix, because the provincial governments in Pakistan do have a ton of money. And if you ask them later, once they retire and they can speak openly, why don't you work on this stuff? They admit to a lack of interest in the subject. And I think that the fact that there is a crisis now, stimulated by USAID's collapse, is that the provincial governments have to step in. A lot of the blame is put on the federation, but healthcare and education are provincial subjects. And I can guarantee you there is enough money with the Sindh government to keep the water purification going in Jamshoro, which was done by USAID. The fact that NGOs even exist in our country means that the state has fallen behind in some way. But the state we always think of as a monolithic entity based in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, but that's not it. The state expands outwards into the periphery through down to local government. And if we reconcile our budget with the needs, public value needs of our people, there is no reason why NGOs would need to do that. There would be something like a larger corporate sector, or philanthropy would exist because we're a generous people. But the fact is that we do have the resources to take it up. But it isn't easy to do it immediately. And your question is about the immediate part. The immediacy of this is very dire. So that's because Trump is doing things immediately, left, right, and center, and he's wreaking havoc everywhere. That's not just Elon Musk,
So
that's him.
if your point get along, so Eshal, how will, as Dr. Saab is saying, in Sindh particularly, hundreds of the workers lost their jobs because of the only one program, that is US-funded tuberculosis control program that was there, abruptly halted. And now the USAID, this particular program, that was actually treating, because Pakistan is suffering from it, 600,000 of the patients in Pakistan. Pakistan ranked 6th among nations across the world. So when this program is shut down now, what about the fate of those 600,000 patients and more who needs diagnostics and the medicine, the critical medicine as well? And what about those workers who were working with that?
So, see, the impact of it is always going to be dire in the short run. The treatment is going to be disrupted because medications were provided by them because they're really expensive. So, if there are no medication, there is no treatment, and if there is no treatment, it eventually translates into death and mortality. So, that's one thing. When we talk about workers losing their job, that's true as well. All of these workers who were employed by USAID are losing their jobs, not just in Sindh, but in other
rest
areas
of the country as well,
yeah.
yes.
So unemployment is going to increase anyway. In the short run, you cannot do anything about it, but we can think about it in the long run. And then there is going to be an increase in the economic burden because you cannot let your people die.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely,
and then
no doubt.
the government will eventually have to step in and buy those medications themselves. And when they do that, it will just put a constraint on our fiscal deficit that is already existing.
Obviously,
Yeah.
obviously, you are absolutely right. So, Dr. Hasan, what are the implications for this Trump administration decision, the funding of halting the funding of HIV and AIDS control program suspension, particularly as the US President's emergency plan for AIDS relief was actually funding HIV and AIDS treatment and prevention, supporting over 20 million people, the patients actually, hardcore patients of HIV AIDS, 270,000 health workers across the globe, while Pakistan has 210,000 HIV AIDS patients and are under treatment. Now they will face cutting of life-saving medications, led to the higher infection rates and an increase in the preventable deaths, and resultantly a severe public health crisis as well. So how do you see this important area for which the global stress was that we have to curtail this HIV AIDS across the world, but now it's going to be a spread?
Yes, as Eshal has pointed out, in the short run, it's going to impact very, very adversely because all the medicines and all the awareness programs that were running through this aid will come to a sudden halt. But ultimately, what will happen, other donors, private donors, and the government itself will have to step in because we cannot let these patients die. The government will have to take this burden on itself in the first place. And again, it will put stress on the economy that is already under strain. So it is going to impact in different areas. The health problem is definitely there, but economy. So it's a combination of these two things. That how we are going to keep this supply of the medicine going, and how we are going to generate those funds through which we can buy medicine for these patients. So it's going to be a difficult situation in a foreseeable future, because the number of patients that you have just quoted, over 200,000, is massive, and we cannot allow them to be on their own, because certainly many of them are not able to buy medicines for themselves. They cannot afford that expensive treatment, and that treatment was coming through this program, and now it is no more there, and we don't see that coming.
This is not the only issue, because when we are going towards agriculture programs, again, there were lots of assistance and cooperation were going on between Pakistan and the USAID. Now the food security, the farmers' livelihood as well, that is going to impact. And if we see the overall crop patterns and the climatic changes and the weather patterns changing, so it means that you have a low yield expected even when we are talking about wheat. So that is again a very important aspect when it comes to the malnutrition in children, having real-time food security across the country. We have fewer resources when it comes to hunger and related diseases. At the same time, we have 40% of the stunted children in Pakistan, when 17.7% of the malnutrition children across the country. So this is going to impact as well. So how do you see the agriculture sector cooperation that is now going already ended with the USAID, with the halt of those fundings?
First up, be that agriculture sector, be that health sector, be that any other sector in where this money was going. Let's look at this situation from another perspective, from Elon Musk's perspective, for example. According to him, there was massive corruption in the money that was being dispersed through this program. Let's say if $800 million were coming to Pakistan and it employed whatever number of workers in the USAID offices, their staff, their expenses, and then this money was given out to the government departments and to the NGOs and other agencies through which these programs were running. We will actually have to sit down and calculate that, for example, out of 100, what exact amount was being spent on these patients, these farmers, their development programs, their whatever was actually happening through this program. So if, according to Elon Musk, there was 60% corruption in this program, so $60 out of 100 go away. They never existed for these patients and for these farmers. What actually existed was 40%, and how that 40% was spent. These are not my words. You know, this is these are the basis on which this program has been stopped. It is their
absolutely right, Doctor. That is very right when it comes to the United States. Although every country takes decision in its own interests, basically, but ultimately it impacts the third world and particularly Pakistan as well. Eshal, what about you yourself, once the student? So, what would be the ultimate impact on at least, although lots of thousands of students are going to be impacted with this, but 530 students who are studying in United States, these are from the flood affected areas of 2022, and now struggling to finance their education and facing uncertain future as Trump administration halted its merit and need based scholarship program worth at least $30.7 million. Yeah. That program was actually supporting underprivileged students pursuing higher education, currently enrolled in undergraduate program at 30 partner universities within United States, under USAID funded initiative by the through the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, HEC, until June 2026. So at least there should be some sort of a grace period should be given to those students who are actually not able to pay their fee, and it is absolutely impossible for them to study in United States. Now they are struggling.
Yeah, it's like just giving them hope and then taking it away the next minute. There's going to be a huge dropout, because me being a student and hoping to pursue a master's soon, studies in US are not cheap. I mean, a normal person...
It's not easy even.
It's not easy even.
Yes.
A normal family from Pakistan cannot afford to send their child there. And given that these are underprivileged students and these are from the flood affected families, they are eventually going to drop out because there's no other way. Even if we ask the government to do it, it's going to put a huge strain on the resources. And then again, it's going to translate into a very social and psychological impact on the students as well, because you are giving them something and then you're taking it away. All the exposure they've gotten, whenever they sit, whenever they think about it, the only thing that's going to come to their mind is that it was taken away.
Obviously,
Yeah.
you are so absolutely right, Dr.
Yes.
Dr. Usman, what would be the ultimate impact of halt of the governance, reduction in corruption, the transparency initiative, religious, ethnic and the political harmony in Pakistan, when USAID was actually supporting democratic governance, administrative system and transparency with $15 million initiative, particularly in our tribal districts, erstwhile FATA, what we call. the Merged Areas Governance Program with $40.7 million, fostering religious, ethnic and the political harmony through $9 million for building peace in Pakistan program. So how do you see, because these are the areas right now, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is suffering the worst kind of terrorism, including the tribal districts which are adjacent to the Pak-Afghan border. So when the funding is gone, so how these areas are going to sustain, because that funding was really a pivot for their development and development for the democratic norms and all other things over there. So what would be the ultimate impact?
I think this is a very good example of something that USAID was contributing to in a positive way, which is giving human capital development to people who have responsibilities. So people who are working in the middle rung of institutions, whether it's judiciary or things like that, by getting that exposure to best practices from abroad, they did get a leg up, and you would see this over the careers of people in Pakistan as they would retire. They would have more human capital, more exposure thanks to programs like this. So it was a very positive thing. And I can add to what Ms. Eshal said about giving people hope and then taking it away. I think this is the US's biggest export now. What do you think they did to the Afghan people after 20 years and then taking it? What do you think they've done to Ukraine right now? Just giving hope and then taking it back abruptly. I think this is the American supreme expertise now and Donald Trump's supreme export in reconciling his deficit. The other point is, though, that there are ways for us to work around this immediate disruption to mitigate its damage. Of course, as Ms. Eshal has correctly said, the damage is abrupt and sudden, but there are ways. For example, what if those kids on those scholarships abroad are now funded by those rich university endowments of those 30 universities? American universities are so rich and they have such huge endowments. Perhaps those universities which are extracting from Americans and outsiders can show a little bit of compassion.
But why not the well-off Pakistanis inside the country and outside the country and abroad?
Sure.
Why not to support these students through our own resources?
Certainly.
And that is going to contribute.
But
really.
even if you have private donors here supporting, you're supporting a tuition fee charged by that university, which is extortionary. The university has some responsibility, I feel.
Definitely, you are right. Eshal, very brief, because we have run short of time. So, US, among the 61 founding members of the World Health Organization, now they are retreating from there. 22% of the funding of the WHO was, and lots of kind of malicious kind of allegations on WHO for one reason or another. I don't want to repeat those allegations, what the Trump administration leveled really, but it is happening now. So ultimately, Pakistan is going to impact, and the health sector is going to be the worst kind of sufferer out of this whole scenario. How do you see that, if very brief?
Yes, so US has taken out its leadership, which was the biggest asset for HWO, and its funding. So it is going to adversely impact Pakistan's overall dynamics. That's all I'll have to say for this.
Your point well taken. Dr. Usman, very brief. Do you not think that this ongoing political backlash against the USAID by the new ruling elite in Washington impact US influence over policy making in developing countries, particularly Pakistan? To what extent does this shift is actually create a strategic opportunity for the global players like China? China is going to invest in the social sector protection. And then the BRICS nations to reshape international development and global health governance overall.
I think this is the most important part that you have mentioned. The fact is that the US had a soft power capital because of this. It was able to influence people subtly rather than by force. Now it has given this instrument it had away for free to other countries to occupy. Other countries can easily put this low rate investment to get a high return now, and this will be the most damaging thing because Trump didn't understand what being a superpower is. Superpowers work through persuasion, and that's what makes them superpowers as opposed to middle powers. So this persuasion part is now gone, and I don't think anybody wants to listen to America right now. Not even Canada, not even EU.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman, for being with us here in the studios. Thank you very much, Eshal, for your presence as well. And thank you very much, Dr. Hasan, for your presence online and very elaborative views you have just elaborated. Viewers, As we have just listened to our panelists, USAID, or United States Agency for International Development, has a legacy of more than 60 years. But unfortunately, it's now shut down and the funding is halted. The DOGE, the Department of the Government Efficiency under Elon Musk, is working. World wants to know that what sort of efficiency would have for the United States if their influence across the world is going to be diminished. And right now that's happening. China and BRICS and all other countries have a chance to invest in the gaps which are now there after the USAID closure. Developing countries are going to suffer, Pakistan the most, particularly the health sector, when we are talking about the malnutrition and stunted children, and we are talking about the women reproductive health. When it comes to HIV, AIDS or tuberculosis, health sector is going to impact the most. When it comes to WHO, the World Health Organization funding halt, Pakistan is going to suffer as well. When we are talking about energy sector, particularly when Pakistan was transiting towards the renewable energy with the support of USAID, now it's halted. Unemployment, poverty and the social injustice or deprivation would contribute as well. So climate initiatives and in agriculture, in water and sanitation, that is also going to impact Pakistan. 530 students who are studying there in United States, their future is bleak. They are waiting for assistance because they are from the flood affected areas and can't afford their education in the United States. So it means that either the government of Pakistan, its departments, the state, or the well-off people within the overseas diaspora or in Pakistan elite, they can sponsor them. Then of course, when we are talking about overall resources, it's important that we have to generate our own resources. We have to expand our tax base, have a revenue and utilize it for already going on USAID funded projects which are halted right now. So these programs must have to be completed for the better future of those vulnerable in Pakistan. And of course, 50% of the infrastructure of the USAID is already left. So we have to contribute for the rest of the 50%. And obviously, now the China, BRICS and all other countries have a chance to fill this gap, and how they are going to react to these decisions, abrupt decisions by the Trump administration, how they are going to react and how they are going to actually resolve these issues. This is a big question. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.